I was walking past a neighborhood that's actually quite affluent that I walk past regularly. And I've noticed something recently about this neighborhood. Every 4 or 5 houses that I saw had either a to let or for sale sign on it. So this neighborhood is usually quite, like I said, it's quite affluent. And normally you don't see things for sale in these neighborhoods. Most of those houses aren't new houses. They're houses that are decades old, and they usually get passed down maybe to someone in the family. So inherited by, from generation to generation. Another thing that I've noticed actually in these neighborhoods is that you have one of these big houses, mansions. Maybe the owner passes away and now the children have to deal with inheritance tax or whatever. Or maybe they're not really interested in living in that neighborhood. Or maybe they want to share the money, whatever. But they end up selling the house. But these for sale houses end up sitting there for years now. And no one either can afford to buy them, or no one is interested in buying a house in that neighborhood. I don't know what it is, but I've noticed also that they usually get sold to developers. So rather than individuals or families that end up moving into the mansion, I call them mansions because they're usually more than 6 bedrooms in those houses. So they also usually have, garden space, massive parking space and stuff. These neighborhoods I'm talking about. And more these days, I'm seeing those neighborhoods being bought up by developers who then take the houses down and put in blocks of flats. So where you used to have maybe a mansion with 7 bedrooms, a big garden, massive parking space in front, a bit of a gate and stuff like that, are being replaced by these sort of mini blocks of flats. So you'd have a block of flats with maybe 6 or 7 flats with smaller units. So rather than having one family living there, now you have, 10 families living in the same space. So what you're getting is a more population dense area. Also, it's a kind of, if you think about it, tokenization of the building that used to need maybe one extremely wealthy person to acquire the property. Now you have 10 different families coming together to acquire it in terms of blocks of flats. So they still participate in sort of the luxury of the community, of the environment that they live in that neighborhood. But now they've sort of distributed the funds over a larger group of people. Now there's, positives and negatives related to that. You have the positivity of the fact that people are able to move into neighborhoods that are maybe not necessarily affordable by them and participate in that neighborhood. But what you also have is, more and more population density in a given place tends to change the character of the place. So again, a lot of people don't care about this stuff. They don't feel sorry for the fact that these are probably, elite people with lots of money. It's about time that you get normal people enjoying some of that stuff. That would be some people's arguments. But what I'm noticing more and more is that this isn't happening just to the elite or the wealthier people who have inheritance or what have you. That's actually the main people suffering in this economic downturn is actually middle class people. All right. So I'll give you an example, right? A friend of mine who sold his flat 10 years ago in 2026, he said to me that he was in the neighborhood and the flat that he sold 10 years ago is now also for sale again, which means whoever bought it, or maybe there's been multiple people after that, are also now getting rid of it. And we looked at the price, because you can look at the price on the internet now of what, buildings are selling. And it's actually selling for slightly less now than he sold it 10 years ago in 2016. Now, granted, it was in East London, and in 2026, I think the neighborhood was still sort of building up from the whole 2012 Olympics sort of frenzy. The neighborhood had stepped up. There's a lot of development going on in the area. So they could, charge a lot for that flat because of the prospect of how much money they were going to make on it. And now in 2026, that hasn't really panned out, or, we've ended up in this economic downturn. And there's a surplus supply of property on the market at the moment. Not because they're building more, they're building, but I don't think they're building at any particularly faster rate that they were building before. I think it's just a lot of people are struggling to pay mortgages. A lot of banks aren't giving mortgages to people. So people who would be getting on the property ladder for the first time are just staying home for longer. Younger people aren't saving enough to be able to afford to put money down on property. People who have put money down on property are looking for a way to get out because they're not able to afford the mortgage. People are fleeing the country. That's another thing in that middle class range. So basically flats now in the UK, for if you're listening from America, these are apartments, we call them flats over here, are pretty much useless as an investment at the moment. Maybe as a super long-term prospect of it being your home, that's maybe worthwhile. Even then, they're way too expensive and out of the reach of most people. And we were talking about these flats I was talking about in these affluent neighborhoods. Each one of those flats is going for over £1 million. And in London, this is not too extravagant. Even in neighborhoods are not so affluent. In London, you're looking at about a minimum of about £500,000 for a 2-bed flat, if you're lucky. And that's just the lower end of things. If you add proximity to a tube station, extra amenities, if it's a new build, then it just piles up, and then you have all the government stuff that they put on top of it, all the stamp duty and stuff, and it's going to cost you a lot. You have to pay for all the bureaucratic stuff, lawyers, blah, blah, blah. So just the amount that's required now to acquire property just puts it completely out of the reach of the range that younger people, people in their early 20s, maybe they're about to start settling down, prospect of raising a family, all of that stuff is just so daunting now in the UK that the future doesn't look very bright, unfortunately. Now, things are hard for everybody. Things are hard for the youngins that are coming out of university or college or whatever it is. They're trying to start their lives, or they're, embarking on their apprenticeship, careers or what have you. Things are hard for pensioners. Things are hard for people who are about to enter pension age. But the core of the economy generators of the country, the middle class and the prime aged people between the age of 30 and 50, that's sort of, or 35 and 55, however you want to look at it, who are the ones that are generating the core of the economy, the working people, the ones that are generating the income for the country, the ones that are paying the most tax, etc. The business owners, the small business owners that are providing employment for people who are making the country run, right, financially and economically. Those guys are struggling now. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos lately, and I found these guys, for example, who seem to sort of, judging by how successful their YouTube channel is and how many comments they get from people who say, oh, you know what, I really resonate with this. This is me, blah, blah, blah. The country is going through a lot at the moment. So anyway, if I find this couple's name, I'll leave them at the description. I'll even play a small clip of them here. And basically what it is that they're leaving the country because they can no longer sustain the life here. They don't even live in London. They live out in Devon, which is probably, a little bit less expensive than London, even though that is balanced out by, being lower income than London. So it always balances out. And there are a small business owner. In fact, they own several businesses that provide employment in the community. And they found that the government has basically made it really hard for them to sustain their business because of all the legislation, all the requirements, and all the bureaucracy that is involved in owning a business. And on top of that, you have the economic downturn, the cost of everything. And this couple, they don't actually have children. They, in their 40s or 50s, this couple, right? So I don't know if the children have moved out of the house, which is likely, or they just never, had children, but they're a couple, right? They have a dog, and even they are having a hard time. And these are people who are hardworking, have several businesses. They're not waiting on the government to do anything for them. All they're asking is for an environment where they can thrive, where their hard work can be fruitful. And they're obviously also providing for their economy, for the environment, by providing jobs for other people. And these guys are finding it hard, and they're taking all that skill, all that, hard work, and they flee into another country because this country has become unlivable for them, unsustainable. Now, can you imagine the people who have children, who have the additional cost of paying, tuition fees, food, putting a roof over people's heads, especially if they're young children. You have to buy them clothes every year, new clothes, because they're growing, etc. They can't make their own money yet. You have to focus on providing for them on top of, having a business and all these other stuff. So you can just imagine how much people are going through at the moment, people in that age bracket. And a lot of those people in that age bracket, not only, especially if they're closer to 50 than they are to 30, a lot of them are actually also caring for the elderly. So not only are they caring for the young ones, they're also caring for the elderly members of their family, if they have some. So things are very tight at the moment all over the country, and there doesn't seem to be much light at the end of the tunnel, which is why a lot of these guys and gals are choosing to flee the country. Now, these guys, I think they're going to Asia, and they might be leaving next week. I've become quite a big fan of their channel, actually. I've binged a few of their videos. I'll leave the link in the description so you can go follow them as well. And they've given up their car, they've sold everything that they have, and they're just going somewhere else. And the whole point is, if this becomes a thing, obviously the government is going to have to do something about it. And the thing that I've seen that they're doing about it is trying to create some kind of financial gate to make it more difficult for people to leave. So whether it be exit taxes or new passport rules, that if you were to live in a different place for X number of time, what you're entitled to over here then changes, all sorts of things. They're trying to discourage this movement. I think they're putting their energy in gating people in rather than in creating an environment where people can thrive better. Because these guys between the age of 30 and 50, again, like I said before, there's hardworking, middle-class people who are small business owners. They are the backbone of this country. And if the backbone crumbles, then the entire body has a problem. Anyway, more doom and gloom from me. I hope things get better. Check out the description for links to their channel. What about you guys? How are you guys feeling? Where are you in the UK? And are things as bad over there as they are here in London? Let me know in the comment section. Let's have a chat.